Find a new way to live in Toronto's coveted Forest Hill neighborhood. Foray by Canderel blends thoughtful, livable suite design with refined finishes and more than 50,000 square feet of amenities, including wellness spaces, work-from-home areas, fitness facilities, and places to unwind. A modern, elevated community crafted for the life you've earned. Your next home starts from $599,000. Learn more at live@foray.ca. That's live at FORET.ca.
The unforgettable opening violin notes from Fiddler on the Roof's Tradition, heard here during a recent rehearsal in Toronto by the Harold Green Jewish Theatre's production of the iconic stage musical. It opens this week for a rare 2-week Canadian run. An American Broadway veteran stars as Tevye the dairyman, while Canadian actors and musicians hold many of the other key roles. And while audiences may know Fiddler from the famous Broadway production or the 1971 film adaptation, this version is something very different. Here, the dialogue, the songs, everything is performed entirely in Yiddish.
The Fiddler of Nacht.
It's the acclaimed National Yiddish Theatre Folksbiene revival under the direction of Oscar-winning actor and director Joel Grey. When his production opened off-Broadway in New York in 2018, it became an unexpected critical and commercial hit, winning major theater awards and introducing new audiences to the language and culture of Sholem Aleichem's original Tevye stories. Toronto's Jewish theater producers quickly wanted to bring the production here until the pandemic intervened. So now, finally, the show's opening with English and Russian supertitles, but in a much different world. Post-October 7th, spiking antisemitism and an ongoing war in the Middle East, which is why the show's cast and crew believe the story's themes of migration, tradition, family, and Jewish survival may resonate deeply with many audiences, but especially with Jewish ones. In particular, those hearing the familiar European Yiddish language and culture of their grandparents.
For the it's too easy to say pride because there's so many complications right now and we're struggling so much, but our heritage and who we are, and to take some comfort in what we've come from and how much we've grown and developed and moved and still kept our culture and still kept our community.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. Welcome to North Star, the flagship podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. The play is a Broadway classic and nearly as old as I am. It first opened in 1964, starring Zero Mostel as Tevye, the milkman. He's struggling to hold on to tradition while raising his daughters in the fictional Jewish village of Anatevka in Czarist Russia in 1905. Then came the 1971 film adaptation, directed by Canadian Norman Jewison, who was not Jewish, starring Israeli actor Chaim Topol. Topol's portrait of Tevye would become legendary. The CJN's Jonathan Rothman was assigned to cover the arrival of this new Yiddish language production in Canada, and it turns out he had an unlikely advantage because he came at this story with fresh eyes. He's never actually seen Fiddler before. Jonathan joins me now to tell us more about the production.
Thank you, Ellen. It's great to be here.
Well, so exciting. But before we actually talk about the Fiddler production and all your work that you've done, reporting on it, is it true you have never seen a whole Fiddler film or play?
It is true. It is true. I went through this entire experience to learn about the production, and it is true. I know some of the songs, and I've seen probably bits of the movie, but I've never sat through an entire film or theatrical production.
Why was it something that you never wanted to know?
You know, I have a familiarity with some of the songs, and I understand what the story's about and what the themes are. It's just, for whatever reason, I never seem to have been present when, if the family sat down to watch it, I wasn't there. I don't know. But, it's been interesting to ask questions and try to, make sure I was grasping enough. It's like Fiddler's like Judaism. It's like you could always go deeper.
You're coming at it with kind of fresh eyes, whereas everybody that I know have seen it a million times and, could recite all the music and the words like back to you. So is Canada the first place outside of New York that's had this Yiddish version?
Yes, the full theatrical production, the answer is yes. LA is actually the next place that the production is going to be mounted that we know about. So,
Right.
So there was a tour that the Harold Green Jewish Theater Company producers had been one of the first groups to sort of take an active interest on. The producers told me about going down to see the show in 2018 or 2019 when it was playing in New York, and that they had started conversations, and then after COVID it kind of lagged, and then they managed to pick it up from the back burner and really wanted to make this happen. So Toronto is the first place that it's happening outside of New York, and there are a lot of key people on the creative side that are in from New York. The director Joel Grey, the lead actor Steven Skybell as Tevye, who's performed it not only this entire run in the Folksbiene production in Yiddish, but also he's performed it before in English, and so he's sort of this like ace lead actor and Broadway performer, and then Zalman Mlotek himself as the musical supervisor, who's the artistic director of the Folksbiene.
This is a really interesting concept to have Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish. What was the reason that they decided this play needed to be heard in its Mamaloshin, in its original language?
Well, that was originally it, as I understand. It's sort of bringing it as close to the original Sholem Aleichem, Tevye the Milkman stories as it can be presented. One of the things that they're sort of navigating with, making sure that people understand that they'll be able to understand everything on a number of levels. So Zalman Mlotek actually talked about this in a few ways. He talked about, first of all, there's subtitles both in English and Russian. The subtitles are projected right into the action. So as you're looking at the play, you're not like needing to look in a different place to follow along. He also says that as the show goes on, you start referencing the text less and less and looking and feeling and hearing more of the action and sort of understanding it for yourself, and you come back to the text as needed. But the other thing that he talks about is and he's not the only one who made this comparison, but he says, like, you don't go see La Traviata if it's not in Italian, like you don't go see a French opera that's not in French, and all those experiences for the performing arts do have often subtitles. So he says that there's a few different ways that people will end up being kind of immersed and able to understand the story, but it also has to do with the actors, and this is why they work so closely with the actors on the Yiddish.
Well, that's what's so unique about this production, is that you will hear this classic, this iconic, Broadway, classic, come to life in the language in which it was conceived and which was written originally by Sholem Aleichem. And that in itself, when you hear it, even if you don't understand it, people say, even if you don't understand it, the sound of it goes right to your kishkis.
What did you learn from the musical director about the music for this show?
Right. So he says that the score that they're working with is an adaptation of the original Broadway score from the 60s, which was put together by a guy named Jerry Blank, and that he's going to be working with a sort of a special sort of 13-piece hand-picked orchestra. He's put the locally based musicians together, and then Mlotek's going to he was coming in at the beginning of the rehearsal period, which was 4 weeks, and then again at the end and sort of tweaking. And so he talked a little bit about how the musical focus of the show and what you'll hear is it is on klezmer, and that it carries the celebration of Jewish celebration, but that that there's also, it carries something of that Broadway sound in the version that we're going to hear in Toronto.
Klezmer music is basically, the celebration of joyous music that's accompanied, that played at weddings, and also, is informed by, the Yiddish words that are part of the songs that many of the klezmer materials uses. But what you'll hear is a special nod to the sound of the klezmer, and you'll hear that in the clarinet playing. You'll hear that in the trumpet playing. You'll hear that, of course, in the fiddle playing.
What do they think is going to keep the meaning of this fresh after all these years?
With Zalman Mlotek, one of the things he said was that we're really living in a different time than when the movie came out, when the Broadway production, the 60s Broadway production, and I believe the original Yiddish adaptation that came in the 60s as well. And he just really feels like we're really living in a different time where people aren't as immediately conscious of being in the time after the Holocaust. People aren't experiencing the kind of things like exclusion from country clubs, perhaps, but that there's still a very turbulent time, and that in this moment, that it still carries a certain resonance for us as the Jewish people and what we can present to the world.
Well, speaking of exclusion, I mean, it's coming at a time, as you've reported, exclusion in the arts. And so having a very Jewish play about migration and pogroms and intermarriage tradition is under attack in many parts of the world. So it'll be interesting to see if it's only for a Jewish audience, or did he say whether this is going to be a universal message?
He did talk about an offering that is for everyone, but when he was speaking about the resonance that the story carries today, he was speaking a little more specifically about how we can find within it how we've withstood many, difficulties. We've managed to hold on to our tradition and do it with a sense of community as we survived and flourished.
We're in a different time. It's a whole different time. So when we can present something positive of our culture, which is a microcosm of who the Jewish people are, were, will be, and how we have withstood all kinds of difficulties, and throughout it with this sense of community and a holding on to tradition, we have survived and flourished. So for me, there are many aspects of why I'm excited about bringing this to Toronto.
Coming up, why performing Fiddler in Yiddish is a labor of love for veteran Canadian actor Theresa Tova. You mentioned earlier that the cast has been rehearsing to get the Yiddish right.
So Mlotek, he talked about the cast being this really special group of people, and a lot of them didn't have Yiddish, but one of the ones, or maybe the only one who did, we've heard conflicting stories about whether there are other quote unquote native Yiddish speakers among the cast. But we know that according to the producers, definitely some of the cast members had some Yiddish. Maybe that's a native level fluency, but for sure, Theresa Tova, the theater artist and performer who I spoke with, for her, it's her native language. And what she said was that she spoke more of I believe it was more of a Polish dialect from her family, and that they wanted a more YIVO standardized Yiddish. She worked with the language coach with Model Didner, but for her it was more of a matter of kind of refining and changing her accent and kind of.
You didn't mention, but she plays who?
So she plays Yenta, and she's actually played it. This is the fourth time in her life she's played it. She's played Yenta 26 years ago at Stratford, and the first time she played it, of course, was as a child in Calgary, which she talks about.
Tell me, when you interviewed her, what did she say about getting the cast down for speaking Yiddish?
She was so excited about the casting and how they had really, gotten people from Vancouver to Halifax in this casting process, and it really found great people. And she said, this is going to be a shtetl of people who love each other.
Because things have changed in theater so much since COVID. The old days when you auditioned for Broadway, you auditioned for Stratford, for Shaw, for the big musicals, for Mirvish, all that. You'd walk in and there'd be a huge table of adjudicators. Well, that never happens anymore. You basically do self-tapes, which we did for this one as well. You had to record an audition, singing, acting in Yiddish, blah, 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 and send it in. And then you wait a month or more, and then you get told, oh, we'd like to see you in person. We're coming to Toronto to audition people, and they give you material to learn. And so it's a big learning opportunity as well. You got to put a lot of work into it. And then you walk into the Elegant Theatre rehearsal hall, and it's like the old days. 12 people sitting at the table. It's like a firing squad. And of course, I know a few of them because I've worked in the Folksbiene Theatre a number of times. I've worked with Zalman internationally a number of times. Mothel, the Harold Green boys I've worked with, and they have to convince Joel Grey that this Canadian he's never heard of, is worth bringing into his production. I hear from Mothel that I'm their fourth Yente, because they've been doing it since 2018.
That she can bring a different dimension to it, a different stage of her life now, but doing it in the Mama Loshen for her. I'm sorry, I'm butchering it with my Yiddish pronunciation.
Okay.
Here, but doing it in the language that she grew up with. She talks about how it was what she spoke at home. She talks about, passing life milestones.
My heart is so open being able to work in my mother tongue, in Mama Loshen of Yiddish. I dream in Yiddish. I speak in Yiddish. I gave birth in Yiddish. I'm screaming at my Gentile husband and my Gentile obstetrician in Yiddish, like on the table. So for me to be able to just land in this world, in Sholem Aleichem, which I have on my bookshelf in the original Yiddish, which I have read, and to be able to just live in this world. Sholem Aleichem is so brilliant. It's one of the first shows I ever did when I was in, I think I was grade 5. I did a Yiddish production of Tevye and his Techter. And, out of my Yiddish school and synagogue back in Calgary, Alberta. This is so like coming home. And what I love about this too, about this company and the effort they put, yes, they're bringing the brilliant Steven Skybell to play Tevye from New York. He is brilliant and he speaks Yiddish. It's a prechtig in Yiddish. I got to tell you, I've listened to interviews and I'm so looking forward to working with him. But everybody else from across the country are people who, I heard from Tracy McElytis, who plays Golda. She's just, we've worked together before and I just adore her. I'm so glad. I'm so happy about the casting. This is going to be a shtetl of people who love each other. Because they're all such great actors from Vancouver to Halifax. They're bringing people in to do this. They really searched. And to be able to go in and like Tracy, I know, said to me, this is the hardest I've ever worked for an audition. Imagine a non-Yiddish speaker having to get their tongue around this language. It is so beautiful, but it is not easy for English speakers. There's even some old Russian Sholem Aleichem kind of words that I had to look up or I had to be taught, going, what the heck are they doing there? Because it's from that period. It's that time. And there's a lot of Mama Loshen in it. And anyway, I'm just so pleased. And I know about the Folksbiene because they brought me to do Lieder von Gan Eden, Songs of Paradise, years ago, Miriam Hoffman's play, for the Folksbiene off-Broadway years ago. And I've watched it. They know how to teach non-Yiddish speakers how to act through a language they don't know. By the time you are doing this, why there's such a long rehearsal period, by the time you are doing this, you are immersed. You know exactly what you're saying. And that's all an audience can hope for, right? Is that we know how to communicate.
Theresa Tova mentions about the cast really being part of her soul, her upbringing. But now we're doing it in a different time. She was a daughter of Holocaust survivors growing up in post-war Canada. Now artists, Jewish people, Jewish culture, anti-Semitism, it's all we talk about. How does she hope that doing this play will speak to the theme, the universal theme that this show mentions?
Right. So she was saying that the resonance of the story is both universal and that there's something that's so relatable for everyone within the story about themes at the heart about what do you do, with taking care of your family, your daughters, marrying them off, and what's going to happen to them, and what's going to happen to your family and tradition and continuity. But she also has a comment about where this moment finds us as the Jewish people, what significance we can kind of draw from the piece in this moment. Take a listen to this.
In that theme that is at the heart, what do you do with your three women, your three girls that want to make choices on their own? How far do you bend before you break? As a people, as a culture, as a man, as a community. It has so many resonances for everyone. It is so universal. And it is also incredibly profound for, I think, us as a Jewish community. For the, it's too easy to say pride because there's so many complications right now. And we're struggling so much. But our heritage and who we are, and to take some comfort in what we've come from and how much we've grown and developed and moved and still kept our culture and still kept our community. I was just looking at the script because I keep trying to learn these lines authentically. And I can't stop crying in that last scene when they finally leave Anatevka. And where are they going? Some are going to Chicago. Some are going to Eretz Yisrael to try and help build a nation. Some are trying, some are going to visit cousins in the archipelago, Russia, the Siberia. We as Jews, we say, wohin soll ich gehen?
Jonathan, can you, besides Theresa Tova, there's some big names in Canadian theater, in Jewish theater, in this show. Who are they in the cast?
Well, the Canadian cast includes Jamie Elman from Yid Life Crisis as Mordechai, Gabi Epstein. There's also a young actress named Lily Schnur who's in the cast. Joshua Klimnik is in the cast as a model.
Model Camisole, of course.
Model Camisole.
Finally, Jonathan, this is exciting. I'm sure you're going to go because our staff is all going together.
Finally going to see the show. I told you.
But how was it when you heard some of the rehearsal or saw some of the behind the scenes events, hearing the songs in Yiddish? Did you still get it?
Absolutely. I think it's the way that Mlotek talks about it. It really does get you to, the language is so evocative on its own. I went to this one event last month at the Royal Ontario Museum, and they did a few of the songs with piano and voice. And so it was really nice to hear Mlotek take to the piano and Skybell just sort of belt out some of the songs in Yiddish. And so this is If I Were a Rich Man, at the end of that presentation at the Royal Ontario Museum.
Wenn ich bin a Rothschild, komm. Ganzen Kegel des Billibong, wenn ich bin a Aleichem Mann.
All right, Jonathan, you encountered a lot of people who aren't Jewish but are in love with the story, with the show. Tell us about the one person that stands out to you when you went to one of these behind-the-scenes events.
There was this one moment after the end of the performance at the ROM event. So Theresa Tova introduces this young woman who happens to be a theater artist to Zalman Mlotek, and she's explaining that this young woman, her grandfather was from India, and he lived in apartheid South Africa. He moved to Canada, and he loved Fiddler. Okay, so she's sort of meeting, this heavy hitter artistic director behind the Yiddish production. And I'm just sort of standing there with them. And then, as the night progresses, I end up chatting with her. And of course, she gives me the full synopsis and goes through the whole play in like 5 or 10 minutes for me. So now I really had the rundown. And, the whole thing just showed that like everyone has this connection to this story. Everyone has, something that links them to Fiddler, or that they, feel drawn to this sort of magical piece.
Thanks a million for your reporting. It's fascinating. I'm looking forward to hearing live when we go, and we'll put the link in the show notes for people who are interested in tickets and to read your article, which was already published on the CJN's website. Thanks a million, Jonathan. Good to talk to you.
Thanks so much, Ellen. It was a pleasure.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounded like for this episode of North Star, made possible thanks to the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Even if you can't get here to the production, write to us and tell us about your favorite Tevye or how Fiddler has been a part of your life. You can reach us at info@thecjn.ca. North Star is produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman and Izzy Helenchild. Michael Freeman's our executive producer, and Alicia Richler is editorial director. Thanks for listening.
Grazie, Tevye. Tevye.